Welcome to Disrupt Your Now. I almost said goforno, Andrea.
That's fine.
Welcome to another episode of Disrupt Your Now. This is the show for entrepreneurs who are ready to shake things up, who want to take control of their life and don't want to keep living for other people. Tonight, my guest is extra special because we originally met something like 15 years ago. And Andrea, I think this is the first time we've spoken where we each can see each other because, I mean, y'all know, people that follow me know I've been developing websites since 95, started my business in 96. So when I met Andrea, we were developing their very first online assessment for the goforno program. And we talked over phone and email and everything, but we've never spoken in person. So I'm thrilled to have you tonight, Andrea. For people who are not familiar with her, she is the author of the book, or co-author of the book, Goforno. Yay! And she speaks all over the world. She has amazing programs, and she is here to help you change your attitude about the word no. So, Andrea, welcome to the show. And first, tell us a bit about your background and how you got to where you are now.
I will. I just have to say though, if anybody is ever on the fence about hiring you,
Oh,
they cannot go wrong because it was the best thing I ever did in my business. Thank God I hired smart people like
oh,
you. Now I don't know if you remember, but we developed the website. Literally, we were inside a cave. Dinosaurs were roaming the planet. That's how long ago it was.
yes, yes. I
Right?
remember, and I had been in business over 10 years then developing websites. In the beginning, I had to hand code them
I
and
remember.
go
Oh
and
yeah,
go
and I
voice.
remember thinking like you were. It was we were talking before we went live. She is was the cutting edge. I'm like, this woman is like so far ahead of her time for what we were, which was great because we were doing something a little bit I think advanced back then. But
Mhm.
so yeah, my business that I run with my husband Richard Fenton is all based on this little book that we wrote 20 years ago called Go for No. The book is a fable. It's about a guy who meets a wildly successful version of himself and learns the secret to success, which is you have to increase your failure rate. You have to intentionally be willing to hear no more often in order to get more yeses. And so the primary way that we have taught this over the last 2 decades is by speaking and training and doing workshops, all usually within corporations. And in the last couple of years, as I've watched the kind of the market shift, I've done more, still doing work with corporate, but also just doing more direct to consumer type of things. Doing some of the things I do is I go for no challenge where people sign up, and I do this more intimate coaching group where we challenge people to see how many no's they can get over a 21
And
day period.
aren't y'all launching, kicking off one of those soon? Did I see that?
Yes, we're happy.
Because I was like,
Thursday.
should I sign up for it?
Well, and I'm telling you, it's really eye opening because you're really faced with this thing that seems like in the distance, it seems like, oh yeah, I could hear no more often. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you're in this challenge and this is what your goal is. You need to hear no more often. And we categorize business no's like sales no's, but also personal no's. So can you just in your everyday life, can you look for those opportunities to ask for things? And that's kind of a fun challenge too.
Yeah.
So I wake up every day, Lisa, with the express purpose of how do I get the book out to the world? How do I share this message? Which is why I was so excited to come on to your show, but also just for us to, connect again,
I
which is
know. I'm
so
just like,
great.
it's so fun that I cannot believe it's literally been like 15 years since
I
we first
know.
worked together.
I know. It's so
And I want to
crazy.
say before you get in deeper, I want to tell the audience Andrea and Richard were so far ahead of the curve. She's sitting here boasting about me, and I really appreciate it. But y'all were so far ahead of the curve because back then people were not connecting personally online with
Mm.
people that they didn't know, other than just maybe through email. And so the fact that y'all have this online assessment and somebody could go to it from your website, I mean, from your book. They had the code to enter.
Mhm.
They took the quiz, and then they got in email their personalized report. That was very, very in front of, now people do it all the time and they don't think it's that big of
Right.
a deal. Y'all, it was a big deal back then. Nobody was doing it. And that's why I was so excited to work with y'all. But it just shows
That's neat.
how far ahead y'all think.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's funny because it is, when you're an entrepreneur, it is challenging, because we also in 2007 we jumped on this thing called online radio. Nobody was really doing that, and we had an online radio show for a while. And then we just kind of, like you do with some projects, we were like, it's really not catching on. And I never thought it would catch on. And now, of course, today we call them podcasts.
Podcasts, yeah.
And I told Rich, I'm like, oh my gosh, we were 5 or 6 years too early on that one. So
yeah, and
it's hard.
Remember that was like pretty big then, and then it went away, and everybody's like, nobody's going to be doing podcasts. And then several years ago, they just exploded again.
Yes,
Pre-COVID, they've
Mhm.
gotten bigger even then, but even before that, they just exploded. So it's really funny how things, come and go.
How these trends, yeah. And you do see some things that are kind of perpetually there, like, as much as email has kind of gone up and down in, I guess, fashion, it's still, I don't know, it's still such a core tool.
Yeah.
We're not giving up on email. In fact, it's
Right.
just, how do you do it better, and how are you more efficient, and how do all of those type of things. So it's such an interesting thing to
And
be
a good lesson, for people to take from that is be aware of the trends, but don't always follow them. Don't always give up on the other things. Because what happened with podcasts is, when YouTube started getting really big, everybody's like, I don't want to listen when I can watch. But what they weren't thinking about is people can't always watch. They're driving or whatever. It uses too much bandwidth, whatever it is. And so that's why I do my show live. And that way, if I'm doing it live, I can't get all OCD because it's out in the wild and whatever, but I do it live, and then I turn it into a traditional podcast. That way, both people, because I'll listen to a podcast for hours while I'm mowing, just one after the other.
Right. Yep. I do it at the gym. Although sometimes I have to listen to music, like during the hard parts. But if I'm walking on that godforsaken elliptical machine, I'll listen to a podcast.
Yeah. Well, so when we first met, y'all had just written the book and launched it, right? It hadn't been that long.
It hadn't been that long, no. And even when we wrote the book, once we wrote it, we were still very entrenched in kind of our old business. When we first launched our company, our ideal client we were speaking to like big retail organizations, anybody that you'd find walking through the mall. And so that was our specialty for years. And we wrote goforno, and those clients purchased that book. But it wasn't until really when we got connected with you, and we were starting to expand the brand, and we were starting to say, okay, our niche is not just the retail industry, it's insurance agents, and it's financial planners, and it's people in real estate. It's anybody that has to go out and face failure and rejection. So we, instead of just focusing on an industry, we said, let's take this thing that we call goforno and bring it to anybody who has a fear of rejection.
Yeah. I love it. And I have to tell you, my husband and I started our first business in 1990 when he retired from the Navy. But I started it doing the sales, cold calls, 6 months before he retired. I had a 4-month-old and a 24-month-old. Never done sales in my life. So it was like jumping off the deep end. But the funny part of the story is, when I think it was before he retired, and I made him take a day off or something like that. And I just remember we were driving around the city. We lived in Jacksonville, Florida. And I was like, he had never done sales. He'd literally been in the Navy his entire life, basically an engineering type mind. And I was like, we're going to take turns going in places. And the very first one he went in, of course, we don't need it. They're nice. People are nice, but they're like, nah, I don't need any. he came out, he goes, I'm never doing that again. I'm never doing it again. And I was like, what do you mean? And then and he ended up being in sales. Not, I mean, we built that business, we sold it in a couple of years, but he literally, from 93 up until he retired to help me take care of my mother, he was a professional salesperson in the marine industry. So
Oh my gosh.
funny how you can overcome these fears.
Yes, and you know, you have that experience, and we've all had, you know, those traumatic like rejection experiences in business. At first, it starts kind of personal, right? It's like your friends and in school, and you don't want to mess up, and you know, you want to be in the right group and all of that stress and pressure. But we are hardwired, Lisa. I talk about this all the time, to not get rejected, to not get thrown out of, you know, the tribe, the herd, and fend for yourself because you've been ostracized. So yeah, we're hardwired to not do it. But of course, in today's day and age, it's the people that learn to get over that, and experience and just go about experiencing it enough to where you go like, okay, it's just part of the process. And a lot of times, because we have to protect ourselves as consumers, our knee-jerk reaction is just no. You know, you just put up your hand and like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. And I do that too, because I'm in sales. I'm so easily sold. I know I'm so easily sold. I'm so easily persuaded. So I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to, I know I'll say yes.
Because you're so open-minded. You know, you're like, oh, I can see the potential in that.
I guess so. But yeah, so that initial no is just a knee-jerk response. And it's why marketing, you know, why you have to do marketing, because you have to have that attention and people have to see you over and over, and you kind of wear people down and get their resistance lowered to where they start to trust you, and they start to say like, okay, I see these people a lot and they're providing good value and they're giving me good information, and you start to become open-minded, like you say. So it's, you know, it's a slow process.
So you said that y'all were working with larger retail companies in the business that you owned. What did y'all do before that?
So before that, I got a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice.
Oh.
I wanted to be a crime scene investigator before there was even a TV show about it, before it was like the popular thing to do.
Yeah, before everybody else wanted to be one.
Right. I'm like, people are watching Forensic Files. I'm like, I wanted to do that years ago. That's, you know, I wanted to catch bad guys. I guess bad people. I really had like this passion for justice, and but unfortunately, after I graduated from college, you know, I went to the sheriff's department and they were like, hey, you know, you can intern with us. In other words, work for free for a couple of years. And then maybe when a job opens, you know, you'll be on the list to be considered. And I'm now at this point, you know, I'm 21, I'm graduated from college, I'm broke. I'm just tired of, I want to make money. So I had been when I was going to school, I had been working at this company called Lens Crafters, the eyeglass retailer. So I had, you know, when I graduated, they were like, we want you full-time management position, you know, we'll promote you. And so I did that. And that's where I met Richard.
Oh my goodness. Well, was he working there or was he a customer?
He was working there as he was one of the top trainers in the organization. He told me the goforno story, which is this story that we talk about in the book, about how he was a struggling suit salesman and how he kind of learned what goforno meant because his mentor asked him if he, you know, how he knew the customer was done after he had this great sale. And his mentor basically, you know, said, you need to learn to goforno.
So, you know, that part of the book really was part of his life. That's so cool.
Yes. So he told me that story, and we would talk a lot. And we realized that we had the same philosophies and mindsets around things. And we kind of, on the down low a little bit, started talking about how we could write a book together and eventually leave the company and start our own business. Well, that plan got a little bit sped up just because we were just too excited and we were ready to go. And so, at one point, so we kind of worked together for a year at Lens Crafters, and we were constantly talking and thinking about this business. And eventually I quit, and literally, like you, I'm cold calling companies. I'm cold calling. We have like no good marketing materials. We have no website. I built the first website using the Microsoft program that they put out, whatever that was called.
Oh God, I can't even remember. PageMaker, I think.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know how I uploaded it anymore. I remember it was like so insane. But yeah, we just somehow pieced this thing together. And honestly, I say that it was luck, but a lot of people weren't special. We just really decided to specialize. And so when we were going to these clients, we were totally speaking their language. I mean, they felt like these guys are totally understand, there's in every profession, there's lingo, there's, and so you start talking that lingo and people go like, you're one of us. And so if we could get a meeting, like if we could get a phone meeting, somebody would be willing to talk to us. I mean, our closure rate was really, really high, our conversion. So it was just a matter of making enough calls, sending packages. Back in the day, we'd send a full press kit through the mail, and then people would call us and we'd talk and we'd book training. And that's really what we did for probably the first, 3 or 4 years. GoForno was one of the things that we taught, and it was one of the things that just resonated. I mean, these people just loved it. And we kind of started to see the handwriting on the wall. We're like, these companies love this concept. This concept is where we're going. And Rich, because he was doing most of the training, he was doing all the training, he was starting to get a little burnt out. Like he was starting to say, like, I just feel like I'm saying the same thing over. And our clients loved us, but they wanted us to do even more and more. And we're like, you guys, we've told you everything we know. We don't have anything else. So eventually we just said, you know what, we want to take this one concept and go bigger with it.
I love it because, salespeople are always like, oh, it's just a numbers game. And true. But when y'all say go for no, it helps shift that mindset. Instead of just numbers, when you start thinking about the word no, and I want to get as many no's as I can, I don't know, it just feels different inside than just saying it's a numbers game.
Yeah. And we do know it's a numbers game, but that always feels icky to me too. Like, it's like, I don't want any customer to feel like, I don't want to feel like a number. I know, prospects nobody wants to feel like a number. When I think of Go for No these days, with the changing of like technology and, and social media and everything, in my head, what I want people to think when they hear Go for No is take a chance. It's like that. It's like that. It's just a different way to say the same thing, which is you're sitting here talking yourself out of why you shouldn't ask for a raise, why you shouldn't ask this person out, why you shouldn't go on this audition, why you shouldn't apply for this job, you name it, Lisa. I mean, anything that you send a proposal, call this prospect, follow up with somebody. I mean, you could there's a million ways that you can go for no. And really all of it is about facing that rejection, but doing it anyway, just taking that chance. And it's crazy when you just, like you said, when you just kind of say, like, I'm just going to do it and not worry about it, that it kind of releases that pressure, and you just start to do it, and you just start to say, I'm going to focus on the doing of it and not the no.
Yeah.
Is how it kind of changes in your mind, right?
Yeah, it really does. Just that mental shift helps a lot. And I'm glad that you brought up that it's not just straight up sales. I mean, it literally can apply to anything in life. So I would say even people who aren't in business, that you'll benefit by reading this book or listening to it or both or whatever. But shoot, now I forgot what I was going to say. I was leading up to something and I got all excited and I forgot. Oh, I was going to say social media. I'm glad you brought that up because, that, even if you're not pitching to sell something, you're showing your vulnerability and you're putting yourself out there, and you're risking that people are going to go, you're stupid or whatever. It doesn't have to be a no. It could just be negative comments, or it could be no likes or whatever, and then people feel like, oh, why did I do this? So I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, it's just a slightly different form of rejection, in different ways. You put up a post and people argue with you, or whatever it is, it's just taking that personal risk, I think. And that's the thing, that the more personal risks you take, the more interesting results you'll get. And yeah, you could end up, I think what's tough for people to realize is that, you look at even celebrities, and it's the ones that tend to get the press are the most outspoken.
Right.
They don't hold back, and they take a lot of risks. And so I think you've got to be careful on social media, because obviously you want to be respectful to people, and you don't want to be a jerk and all of that. And so you could wade into different, deeper waters on the whole social media thing. But just in general, I think there's that idea of safety. And I've talked to, more millennials that they even stress out about sending an email and getting a rejection. Like, to them, just hitting the send button is so terrifying if they're sending an email to someone important, or something that they feel like they have a lot writing on it. Tremendous apprehension and anxiety over it. And I'm thinking, like, to me, I have no problem sending a million emails, but the phone call, is obviously, it's harder. Sending somebody a video or whatever. So I think it kind of depends. I think technology has protected a lot of people from the rejection.
Yes, it has. And younger people, and I know you know this, and we don't mean it negatively, but they haven't learned the soft skills that people like us had to learn growing up. I mean, and one of the nonprofits that we promote through the NASCAR work that we do, and you've probably seen on social media, so I won't go into depth on that, but one of the nonprofits that we promote, they have a for-profit part, and they train active duty special forces in like tactical mobility. But they have told me one of the biggest things that they have to teach is soft skills, because younger people, and anybody younger listening, I don't mean this disparagingly, but they've been able to separate themselves with the phone and the computer and everything for so long that they're not used to having to look people in the eye like we had to. And you have to be able to do that if you're going to go into a war zone and work with people that you trust and build trust.
So that reminds me of a funny story, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing it. So I spoke at this conference called Outbound, and it's run by these four gentlemen. One of the guys is named Jeb Blunt, and he is the author of all of these sales books, Fanatical Prospecting and Objections, and he does a lot of training with the military in recruiting. And he says, he's like, I've been in rooms with trained soldiers, people who have committed to die for this country. They carry a weapon. They've said, yes, I will go and fight the enemy on foreign soil or domestic soil, whatever. He goes, but they'll sit in a room and they'll be terrified to call a 17-year-old to try to recruit them.
Yeah.
I'd rather just go into war. I'd rather be dodging bullets. That's how crazy rejection is, right? How powerful it is, because they would rather not have to call this 17-year-old to see if this kid wants to come in and talk about being, this recruiting opportunity. So it's everywhere. And it's in the people that you would think would be the most resilient, the hardest, they are in those areas. But this is, again, it's that wiring. And it's, I think, in many ways, it's just society, and we're taught and trained to kind of avoid this. So that's a big part of the goforno work that I have done over the years. It's really transitioned to be, I think we started off a lot more numbers game. I think we started off of just like make as many calls as you can and goforno, and rah, 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 and which is great. But now we've transitioned to so much of it being the mindset, so much of it being that foundation of what's going on in your head. How are you interpreting this rejection?
So y'all wrote the book. So originally you were doing the retail stuff. You wrote the book. How did you promote the book and build up to the point that you could start branching out?
We spent a lot of money. We did.
Well,
Well, and I know nobody
mean,
wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. And not all at once. It was a slow process. And so we published that book. We published goforno in 2000. We hit and Amazon wasn't around. By the time Amazon was really, really a thing, and we had gotten listed on Amazon, I think in 2007 with the book. We hit the sales and #1 sales book on the selling list.
Cool.
On December 31st, 2010.
Wow.
So it took 10, it was 10 years. It was 2000, almost 2011. It took 10 years. And a big part of it, when I say spend money, was, we would look for influencers. We would look for people who had teams, people who ran companies, people who had, back then it was like, hey, if this person has a radio show or they have maybe they have a big newsletter, we would just send books and send packages. That was direct mail was such a big part of what we did back then. And at some point, I bet you there's going to be a resurgence of that. You can kind of see it with businesses like Send Out Cards, who do the cards and things like that. That direct mail, but that's what we did. We knew that we just need this book to get read. And if somebody will read it, it will probably make an impact on them. It'll probably influence them and they'll recommend it to someone else, or they'll give a copy. And that's really been a big part of, our marketing plan. And a part of that was because the book is also short. It's not 300 pages. I doubt we would have the success that we've had if this book was 300 pages. I just don't see it.
Yeah. And, because I knew that you were going to be on the show a couple of weeks ago, I was driving back from Raleigh, North Carolina. We only live about an hour away. So I listened to the ebook again so that it would be fresh in my mind. But I want to say about Amazon. Amazon was actually around in the 90s, but they didn't have the self-publishing platform. So when y'all were using it at first, were you doing self-publishing through them or just selling through them?
That's a great question. So we were printing our own books and using one of the programs that they have called Advantage, where we were shipping in books. And how it works is, it's quite amazing. Their system is quite amazing. So they would order like 5 copies from us.
Yeah.
And so we would ship those 5 copies in and they would sell. And of course, Amazon's dealing with the customer and they're taking payment and they're doing the shipping, which is great. Well, it got to the point where we were shipping 2 and 3 cases of books, 300, 400 books a month.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. It was starting to become crazy. So, we were shipping, hundreds and hundreds of books. And then eventually, as their on-demand platform came online, I don't even know when exactly we made the transition, probably about 2 years ago, we just decided it was logistically better for them to start printing the book.
Yeah, it's funny because in 97, I was selling books through Amazon. It was the exact same way as how y'all started. Yeah. They would place an order and it was usually 5, 6, 7 books at a time initially. And that was for a client that was an information-based company. It was technical guides that they had. And they were basically going to go bankrupt because they were out of inventory. They couldn't go back to print. And I don't want to go into detail, but I helped them turn around the business by developing an online subscription-based service so that people could subscribe digitally all the way back in the 90s. One of the first subscription-based services that I know of outside of ISPs, but I was selling the books through Amazon. I was selling them through that company's website. And then we developed this online subscription-based platform so that people didn't have to wait for the next book to come out, because we could always update the information about the different boats available. And long story short, they went in less than 2 years, went from basically going bankrupt to selling for 20 times investment. It wasn't even up for sale. And it closed right before the dot-com bubble burst.
Oh my gosh.
And I've been in this industry for so long that, I mean, back in the 90s, there were all these people, oh, the internet's just a fad. It's not gonna, and then when the bubble burst, of course, they really were like, yeah, well, that was fun while it lasted. But I have to say, Andrea, even now, people think, oh, everything that can be done has been done. We literally have only scratched the surface of what's possible with the internet, I believe.
Agreed. That is amazing. Yeah, and I was not aware of that, but I will tell you this. In 2008, 2009, I remember very distinctly, because we lived in the Pacific Northwest, driving and having a conversation with Richard about Amazon and about investing in Amazon. And at that time I was very wise, and I told him, I said, it's probably just too late. So we didn't buy Amazon stock even back then. Right. So because I was so
yeah, you just think, yeah.
I'm so like, funny. It's too late. The company's already, it's everybody knows about it. So yeah, if I could go back, that would be
yeah, that would be wild. But yeah, you're right though. Most people, I mean, when we were selling on it, it was all books, and very, very, very few people, even if they'd heard of it, they didn't really know what it was. They weren't really buying books, And so I think it's really cool though that we have that similar thing where we both started out with books through Amazon. So, and up until then, I mean, the books were already in Borders and Barnes and Noble and traditional, but that was the first, online platform that I sold those books through.
Right. That is so amazing. Yeah. And it's such a fun journey. You really just have to, it's like you just kind of go with the flow, and you get very good at just uncertainty. You just get very good at handling uncertainty and change. You just gotta love change.
Yeah. But to me, that's one of the most fun things about owning your own business, especially in the kind of business we're in, that it can constantly evolve. We're not stuck in some place that, oh, if we change, we're going to lose all of our clients or whatever. We can just constantly evolve. And I love that because I get bored very easily. So that was one of the things that attracted me to the web so much back in the early 90s, was because I used to be an accountant and hated it. Passed the CPA exam without studying, but hated it. And I was just miserable. But then when I discovered the web, I was like, oh my God, I can use my entrepreneurial experience and accounting experience and this, that, and the other, and pull it all together.
And that detail orientation, because building websites is so detail oriented. There are so many, oh my gosh, hundreds of minor details that you've got to be on top of. Anything technological these days. But I agree with you. We don't know where it's going, and it looks like it's going to be Web3, and it's going to be the metaverse, and it's going to be digital currency. And
well, I always tell people, I'm 60, so I always tell people, like, if you're my age or a little younger or older, you can remember, especially if you lived in a rural area, that some people may not have even had phones, or some businesses didn't, because they're like, I don't need a phone. I'm just right here in this little town. Or I don't really remember a business not, but I'm sure at some point they, before that they didn't. Or even people had party lines, and now we have a computer in our pocket.
Right.
So I always tell people, remember when you're a kid, you thought the phone was the phone was the phone. You never, ever would have imagined that you would have been carrying around a phone in your pocket, much less that it was way more powerful than the first desktop computers that we had.
Right.
So I look at the internet right now as kind of being the equivalent of when basically everybody had a phone. They weren't on party lines and all that, and people were starting to have like voicemail. They didn't even call it voicemail. It was answering machine. That's kind of where I look at the internet as being right now, that people think, oh, it's done everything it could do. But think of all the industries that literally wouldn't have existed without the telephone, call centers, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be very exciting to see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I love about just the book itself and y'all's success with it is that you wrote it so long ago, but it's still relevant. You know, so many
Mm,
people write a book and it's like they write it, and then after it's so time sensitive that after several years, it's like, meh, you know, people quit
yeah.
buying it. They can't really market it anymore. But y'all's message is timeless.
It is a timeless, evergreen message for sure, and which is so weird because you know that was something that I don't think we saw. I wouldn't have predicted that it
Yeah.
would go this long and be so kind of almost become like this in some circles, almost like it's like a classic. It's
Yeah, it is.
yeah, um, which is so. I mean, it's so great. I love that, and I'm so passionate about the topic. I'm so passionate about people not telling themselves no.
Yeah.
That I'd rather have you get rejected. I'd rather have you experience the pain of a no and at least know that you tried than just talk yourself out of something or say, no, I can't try. I'll just get rejected. We don't know. We don't know until we ask. So,
Right. And 100% of the ones that we don't ask are guaranteed rejection or
yeah,
failures.
exactly.
You don't get rejected, but you never even put yourself in the game.
Right, right. And that is, if there's just a couple of secrets in life, and I just think that asking is one of them. And
Mhm.
it's a literally it's like a biblical principle: ask and ye shall receive. I mean, it goes back till as long
Yeah.
as humans have been writing.
Mhm. So you y'all transition from the big retailers, and I guess you probably still do work with some of those big companies, but a lot of the people that you work with now are entrepreneurs and small business owners.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go into a company who's having an annual sales meeting, and we'll
Mhm.
speak to a group of 200 people or 500 people, and I absolutely love that, which is
Yeah.
crazy because there was a point in my life where I would have paid you to not have me, like I would have paid you to not have me speak.
Yeah, that's so funny.
I would have said, like, I will give you any amount of money, please don't make me speak. But which just goes to the passion. I think when you love your message, I don't think I would be a very good speaker going up and talking about something that I don't know or I don't care
Yeah.
about, right?
Mhm.
Um, so there's that piece of it, but then kind of on the more micro level, people who come to the website, yeah, are entrepreneurs, mostly solo practitioners, business, independent business owners of all kinds,
Yeah.
and they just hear about it because I think what we say, granted, is not new. I mean, the idea that you know you don't ask, you don't get. I mean, that is a
Mhm.
fundamental, right? It's fundamental principle as we've been talking about. We just um, you know struck upon, Richard did, with this conversation, the thing that happened to him, this phrase goforno. And so we've just kind of managed to package it, I think,
Yeah.
in a way that is palatable and that people understand quickly and easily.
Mhm.
So, that's I think the big difference. But
Yeah, that's the great thing about it. It's a timeless message, but you simplified it in a way that's really, really easy to remember because it rhymes and it gives people the positive spin instead of the negative spin.
yeah. I mean, the challenge I find now, and I'm learning more and more about, I still learn more and more about this concept all the time
Mhm.
when I continue to teach people. Like so I've been doing these 21-day Go for No challenges and watching people challenge themselves to try to hear no more often in 21 days. And it's really interesting what happens. It's interesting that some people, they get so nervous or fearful or anxious, I think they talk themselves out of it, and they'll just ditch the challenge, even
Yeah.
though they paid for it and they're in. It's like, I don't want to do this, or I don't want
Mhm.
to do this right now. You have some people who do it, and they just have this. There's one young woman in my last challenge named Aggie. She said it just clicked. She's like, I'm talking to everybody. I'm getting a ton of yeses. I'm getting a lot of nos. But she goes, I just don't care anymore. I'm just she's going gangbusters with it. And
That's awesome.
it was amazing to see. And I've got other people that are kind of in the middle, they're challenged with their habits. It's a habit to kind of change from I'd like to just make one sale and get this one, yes, and then I'll be good for the week or the month. I got the one piece of business, instead of saying, well, wait a minute, what if you just said, I'm going to try to get 2 or 3 more no's this month. Maybe you'll get a second yes you didn't count on. So don't limit yourself, And so those are the really interesting ones where I'm dealing with people's, challenging their commitment, challenging their habits, and trying to put this into daily practice. I tell people it's a practice. So, you've got to set aside, and of course, time is always a big challenge too. Like, oh, I didn't have time. I didn't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you guys, this is like sales 101. So basically you're saying you didn't do anything to move the needle revenue-wise in your business, because that's what goforno is, right? It's just a way to generate revenue in your business, because it's about talking to people. So it's really been interesting of what I've learned watching people do this kind of in real time.
Do you find that, especially entrepreneurs, not so much salespeople, because they're going to have the messaging that the company has provided, but do you find, is it common for entrepreneurs to be like, well, I'm not sure who to reach out to and what to say, even if they know what they do, just the whole thing of who should I reach out to and how should I approach them?
Yes. And it's really interesting that you would bring that up, because that's what I'm realizing. And I'm not that type of, that coach, even though I have I being in business myself, I have clarity on that. I understand. But I think when you start doing a Go for No challenge, I've seen a couple people say, I realize, one, I'm like this one gentleman, he's like, I realize I'm just doing one long sales pitch and it's not working. I need to just qualify more up front. I need to figure out, is this a ideal client for me, instead of just doing this long sales pitch and then kind of at the end the person just
their eyes rolled up in their head.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, wait a minute, before you do that, ask them a couple questions to determine if you should then go into your long sales pitch, which could probably be shortened. But before you do that, right? So people are having those kind of learnings. And one other lady who's a coach, she's kind of back again. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this challenge. And then she's realizing, I don't know if I'm talking to the right people, because goforno is not necessarily working the way it should. And so she's realizing, I've got to step back and say, am I talking to the right person? And that's one of the things that, I was talking to her about was, you've got to be very clear on your client. And I said, don't just be a coach. I mean, be clear that, I coach single moms who want to start a business, so that if you're talking to somebody who's, you've been in business 25 years, not a single mom, or a mom, but your kids are grown. You're not the ideal client. And she would figure that out so quickly, and she'd save you time and she'd save herself time. So people are having those kind of epiphanies, I think, when they finally come to this point of, okay, I need to be talking to a lot more people.
Yeah, I'm working with a lot of people now, older people. Now I have clients as young as 21 and as old as mid 70s. But the ideal audience for me is like 50 and older. And that's simply because I'm able to speak that language to them and help bridge that gap between them and the digital world, or them and their staff, or them and their web designers, or working with SaaS companies and helping them develop their messaging so that people 50 and older understand it. Because yourself, technology companies, well, not just them, but I'm picking on them right now. They love to just use all this gobbledygook, throw out all these words. And basically what they're doing is they're talking to their competitors. They're trying to impress their competitors. It's like, no, you have to talk how your customer will know what the heck, you're offering. But a lot of the older people that I work with are people who are like, you know what? I'm so sick of the corporate world. And I thought I was going to wait until at this point, 60s or whatever, start my business. But hey, I'm going to do it now. And that's one thing COVID has done is
Oh,
it's given people, even if they didn't lose their job, it's kind of given them the strength to go, you know what? All this isn't as written in stone as I thought it would be. My life actually is at a lot higher risk than thought it was. I might as well jump in and do it. So
yeah.
I love to work with people to help them take their lifetime of experience and turn it into a lifestyle business. But as you said, if you don't know who you want to work with and what you want to do with them, you can end up like being way worse off than if you had a job, because then you have like tons of bosses
Right.
who are clients,
Yeah.
instead of having the people that you can really help and enjoy working with.
Well, and to add to that, see, the reason you're so like, you know who you work with and why, because you have the marketing mind of, okay, I have to determine that, then that
Yeah.
informs my messaging. That
Yeah.
informs like how we explain what we do on the website. It explains what the outcomes are, what the benefits are working with me, what the outcomes are. And then that's how you can go for no from there. But yeah, to your question though, because your original question was, are people, are they challenged finding these people? And
Mhm.
yeah, it's part of it. I think it's more challenging because we're in a more digital world. So you are left to be kind of out there on social media. You're trying to figure out, when in my business, it's B2B. So I can, grab onto a company name and a title and kind of go from there. So I think when your client is not necessarily sitting at a desk somewhere, it's harder. So you've got to have a combination of prospecting strategies, but also lead generation and
Right.
attraction marketing. And if you can have both. But I
Mhm.
always say, like, even if you're doing 100% marketing and you're just attracting leads and you're attracting, at some point you're going to have a conversation with this person. And at some point you're going to say, this is my fee, this is what I can do. What do you think?
Exactly.
That's go for no.
Yeah, and a lot of people are like, I don't want to ask that because they just want to keep talking. Like you talked about the long pitch.
Mm,
It's like people are like, if I just keep talking, I don't have to ask. And maybe at some point they'll be like, can I buy it?
right.
It's a way of delaying that question. And hey, I know I've been in business for so long, I've done that myself. And part of the reason I know who I want to work with is because I've worked with so many of the wrong people over the years. Because you get into that thing of I just need cash flow, I just need money,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
and that's
Yes.
the absolute worst because then you end up a hamster on a wheel. You're working, but you're never getting ahead because you're not working with the highest value clients, delivering the value to them that you can.
And you'll love this. You may have heard this or seen this online somewhere, but a good no is better than a bad yes. And I
Yeah,
have taken bad yeses as well. I'm like the intuition kicks in. I'm like, I don't know if this is good, but it's a yes. So we're gonna accept this yes. And then
mhm.
you realize I would have just been better with a good no. So you
That's
learn,
right.
you learn.
Yeah,
Failure is such a fantastic teacher.
yeah,
You do it a couple times and you start to catch on, and you go like, okay, even if I'm not
mhm.
going to go down that path, because your time will be better spent doing something else or finding the person that is the good fit for you.
Yeah, and inevitably, the ones that aren't a good fit, you end up spending more time with. You're not happy. A lot of times, they're not
They're not
happy.
happy.
Even if you've done the best that you can, it's like a lot of times they don't understand what it is that you're even delivering, or they don't understand enough
Right.
about it. So
Yeah.
do y'all ever do entrepreneur conferences, or is most of your entrepreneur work just like through online courses and stuff?
So most of it is like corporate,
Mhm.
but every now and then, I like saying yes to a lot of things
Yeah.
because I just Rich and I were talking about this the other day. I probably my social style is probably that of like an otter. So if it's fun, if I perceive that it is fun, I'm like, yes, I want to do it.
Yeah.
So that informs most of my decisions. So entrepreneurial conferences and things of that nature, yes. I mean, we've done some of those as well.
Yeah. And that's so funny that you're like that. And people are shocked because I talk so much and I never meet a stranger. People are shocked that I'm an introvert. I can have really great conversations with a total stranger, or I can speak in front of hundreds of people and I'm fine. But put me in a group of like 8 or 10 people where there are people who are like bragging about what they know, and maybe they know like this much of what I know, but I'll just stand there and not say anything. And um, so it just depends on the situation that I'm in.
Right. And where you get your energy from. So
Right.
probably when you're done with like an event, and
Mhm.
Richard is an introvert as well. So he calls it hiding in plain sight.
Yep.
He'll speak on stage, but then he doesn't want to talk to anybody. And me, after I speak, I'm like after this interview, I'll be for the next 2 hours, I'll
Yeah.
just be like, I want to talk to someone else.
Yeah, and it's funny because even though I am an introvert, every time I do my show, I'm like, "Woo, I wanna go home." I'm like, I'm talking to my husband, and even if it's a day that I'm like, I'm tired or, just in a bad mood, I wish I didn't have my show. I'm always so charged up, but when I talk to people for a long time, or even if it's on vacation or even family things, when I've been around people for like a few days or whatever, I call it going in my cave. I have to go in my cave and like kind of recharge. And I never knew that I was an introvert until one of my friends, who's a New York Times best-selling novelist, years ago, I mentioned going in my cave, and she goes, "Well, that's because you're an introvert." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm so loud, and and
Right.
no, that doesn't," because I never knew the
The
difference.
true definition. Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. My
I
mom
just
is
thought it
like
meant being
that.
a loud
Yeah.
blabbermouth.
Yeah, right. You think like somebody who's loud and who likes to talk, but yeah, it's that energy piece. And so yeah, you go into your cave and
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Well, we
interesting.
should figure out something to do for entrepreneurs together. We like do a virtual conference or something. I have like full
Yeah.
blown conferencing software, not just like Zoom. I mean, like you can have multi track, multi day, whatever.
Interesting. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm game. Or we figure out we do a small marketing
Mhm.
sales boot campy thing and we do it somewhere near Lynchburg.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I would love to do that. And the NASCAR driver that I work with, his dad is an entrepreneur, and we actually have been planning to do some entrepreneur conferences to help like military spouses and veterans who are transitioning
Oh,
out and things like that. As a matter of
I'm
fact,
I'm in. So you just anytime if you're ever in a conversation, you can throw my name and say I already have somebody who's in.
okay, cool. Because we actually had one scheduled a couple years ago, and Steve Sims, I don't know if you know Steve, he wrote
Yeah.
Blue Fishing. Well, he's my mentor, and he was going to come and speak. Anyway, we ended up having to postpone it, and then COVID hit, so we never did it. But it's still one of those things that we're like, we still have to do that. So yeah, I'll talk to him. We need to fix something up, and they all live here, or not
Oh,
Steve, but the driver and his dad and everything. That would be so cool to do something in Lynchburg.
absolutely. Yeah. No, we're in. And Rich's daughter lives in Tennessee, so we
Okay.
it's a perfect excuse to kind of come up to that neighborhood as
And
well.
y'all are in California, right? Orange County, is that
We're
right?
we're outside Orlando now.
Oh, okay. I
Yes,
didn't know that.
yes. So we bought a house. I call it the swamps of Central Florida because we have a gator in the back pond right
Uh-huh.
behind the house.
What town?
It's called DeBerry.
Okay, yeah, I know exactly where that is.
Okay.
My husband grew up in Lakeland.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
DeBerry is small. I didn't even realize
yeah.
there's only like 20,000 residents technically in this area,
Yeah.
but this whole area of Central Florida is just
Yes, it's
exploding.
exploded. We lived in Jacksonville for 15 years, like for his last tour of duty, and then after he retired, before we moved back up to Virginia. But as I said, he grew up in Lakeland, and when he was growing up, this was pre Disney.
Disney, yeah.
Orlando was nothing but citrus groves, and Lakeland was actually bigger. It wasn't huge, but it was bigger. But Orlando went after the entertainment industry, and Lakeland went after the retirement industry.
Oh,
And
got
that
it.
goes to show you long-term strategy, look at where it is. And you could say there's good and bad things about both of them, but that's what put Orlando in that huge trajectory.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the conferences and hotels and that industry, and
Mhm.
of course the theme parks. I mean, yeah, we have
Yeah. Well,
every.
and I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about this on the show. I'm telling people what we ought to do, but the villages are down there and they've been wanting our driver to come down. We could do something there at the villages because there are people that live that, that's that huge retirement
Right, right.
place.
Yeah,
But there are people who live there that aren't retired yet. And, it's huge.
sure.
They actually have more golf carts in the villages than there are taxis in New York City.
I
It's
believe it. I believe it. Yeah. I've
Yeah,
driven
that would
through
be
a
a fun
couple
place to
times.
yeah, that would be a fun place to do something too. So, okay, I've had you for almost an hour, so I want you to tell people how they can hook up with y'all, how they can get your book and find out more.
Yes, yeah. So the book's on Amazon. We covered the whole Amazon thing. So all you have to do is type goforno in to Amazon and come to our website at goforno.com. We've got the quiz on there still. We recently retooled that, and I've got a blog with a lot of free stuff that you can read, free posts and things like that. And everything about Go for No is there. So
Awesome.
yeah, come
And when does
explore.
the next challenge, when does that start?
So if you come and sign up for our newsletter, you'll get
Okay,
notifications. We've got the one starting on Thursday.
okay.
There's a couple spots left, but we're doing another one in June. I'm probably going to take the summer off, and then in September, I think I'm going to come back with something even more intensive than
Ooh,
even this one. I'm playing around with even a deeper level of accountability. So we'll
nice.
see.
Well, I need to introduce you to my friend Brandon Straza because he's going to be launching a platform called the Success Finder, which is strictly for entrepreneurs, who need to find a coach. So it's really cool.
Mhm.
You can have courses and everything on it. So it's a way, instead of having to get through all the noise on Facebook and everything,
Right.
people who are looking for whatever it is, they have a place that
Right.
they can go and find the people that they need.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
it's in beta right now, and I'm one of the early adopters on it, but it'll be launching like probably September-ish or whatever. So
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
introduce you to Brandon because y'all definitely need to be on there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Good. Keep me posted on
Andrea,
that.
thank you so much for joining me tonight. This
Yeah,
has been so much fun.
it has. It has. I hope people enjoyed watching us chat about everything Go for No and what's going on with us and our
Yeah.
our, our future collaborations.
Yeah, I hope so too. I know I go off topic, but I always say, you know what? I want people to feel like they're just sitting in the den listening to
Yeah.
our conversation. I don't want it to be like all stiff. So when we
Oh,
go off course, that's what you do when you're
better.
just sitting around chatting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I am going to have a special episode Thursday evening. The guy who did Whoop, There It Is, that song,
Yeah.
he is going to be on the show Thursday. And he was supposed to be on a few weeks ago, and we had to reschedule because we had technical difficulties. So
Oh, that's
7 o'clock,
fascinating.
6 o'clock Thursday evening, I have a special episode coming in. So I hope that y'all will watch that. Thanks again, Andrea, for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure.
See everybody else Thursday.